Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Remotely News, the show that brings you news you may or may not be able to use. I'm your host, Greg DeMink. Before we begin, I'd like to apologize for the delay between episodes. I was out in the real world doing actual work, greedily supplementing my massive YouTube earnings, and placating my wife. Anyway, on to our first segment. While everyone went crazy over the name change and the barbecue sauce in the background, I think the most important and yet underreported bit of news to come out of the Facebook Connect event was a Quest 2 update designed to prevent you from punching your toddler in the face. Yes, you heard that right, and be warned, in this segment, you're going to see some toddler punching videos. For those of you unfamiliar with the Quest 2, it's a wireless self-contained VR device, meaning that it doesn't require extra sensors or a connection to a PC to operate. It is shaping up to be an important part of Meta's plans for the future and is being aggressively marketed to everyone from gamers to business owners. I myself was convinced to buy one because of its potential as a fitness device. Keeping Quest 2 users from jumping through windows is a system called the Guardian, and simply put, you map out a virtual safe space in a play area and the Quest 2 will inform you if you approach its border. If you walk outside the Guardian, it triggers something called pass-through, which allows you to see a grayed out, blurry version of your surroundings. While pretty impressive in its own right, for some users it remains an imperfect system. And the old Guardian system didn't take note of changes in your surroundings or objects entering the Guardian zone. But the new update changes that, which is great for shared or family spaces. Now, the update only came after 10 million units had already been shipped, but it will hopefully save new users a fortune in pediatric medical bills and prevent awkward conversations with social workers and police this holiday season. Better late than never? Speaking of nightmares waiting to happen, fans of Futurama are well acquainted with suicide booths.
Please select mode of death, quick and painless, or slow and horrible.
Yeah, I'd like to place a collect call.
You have selected slow and horrible.
Good choice. Bring it on, baby!
And now it seems we are one step closer to that reality. This is because a 3D printed capsule destined for use in assisted suicide will now be legally allowed to operate in Switzerland. The tiny nation famous for its mountains, clocks, and neutrality is increasingly gaining a reputation as the home of assisted suicide. In 2020, under the care of doctors, more than 1,300 people ingested the drug liquid sodium pentobarbital, and within 5 minutes those people slipped into a deep coma, followed soon after by death. But that drug is a controlled substance and you need to get a prescription and have medical supervision to use it.
Ironic.
The Sarco device, Sarco is short for sarcophagus, wetty, gets around this by 1, being 3D printable so you can build it at home without involving anyone else like a doctor. And 2, it uses 4 liters of nitrogen gas, which is relatively cheap and easy to obtain. As a safety measure though, you'll be happy to know, it will require the prospective user to complete a cognitive or psychiatric online test to gain access to the code to either operate the device or receive the schematics to print it. The Sarco is also designed to be portable so you can set it up anywhere with the intention of it being placed somewhere with a great view. The developer and major euthanasia advocate Philip Nitschke has said that the design is intended to resemble that of a spaceship in order to give users the feeling that they are traveling to the great beyond. The reaction to the device has not been entirely positive, with many putting forward the idea that it is another step down the slippery slope that undermines the sanctity of human life, with critics saying that the Sarco, which was first developed in 2017, will only serve to glamorize suicide and that it is simply a glorified gas chamber. Responding to past criticism of his euthanasia advocacy, Nitschke has said, "I believe it's a fundamental human right to choose when to die. It's not just some medical privilege for the very sick. If you've got the precious gift of life, you should be able to give that gift away at a time of your choosing." Beijing will host the Winter Olympics in February 2022, but Chinese hopes to recreate a smaller version of the propaganda coup that was the 2008 Summer Games met a tiny snag this week. The US has announced a boycott of the Games, citing the crackdowns in Hong Kong, as well as the persecution of Uyghurs, which is now increasingly being labeled a genocide. The US was quickly joined by Canada, Australia, and the UK announcing similar boycotts, though other allies of the US have spoken out against the move. But despite what early headlines might have led you to believe, the Games will go ahead as planned and with little disruption. This boycott is a diplomatic one, which means that government officials and employees won't be attending the Games in an official capacity, but the athletes will still be competing. So we'll once again have all the excitement of sports like curling and biathlon. Yay! Now, just spitballing, but wouldn't it be awesome if the diplomats actually got in on the action? Even better would be a event for world leaders. I don't know, maybe luge. You just put them on one of the toboggans and fire them down the pipe. Best team, or even just the survivors, win dominion over the earth for 4 years.
Oh boy. Airborne. Oh.
That is a sport and system of government that I could get behind. The diplomatic boycott of the Olympics was followed later in the week by far more meaningful economic action. A bill banning the import to the US of products manufactured in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region just passed Congress by a remarkable 428 votes to 1. This could have serious ramifications for certain sectors of the Chinese economy and represents a rare bit of bipartisan legislation that was achieved in the face of reportedly aggressive lobbying from the likes of Nike and Coca-Cola, who have business interests in that region. Oh, and that one vote, it was from Republican representative from Kentucky, Thomas Massie, who made headlines earlier in December for this wholesome Christmas family photo. The congressman says he voted no because he believes the United States should not interfere in the internal affairs of foreign countries. Now, moving from internal affairs to truly external affairs, some space news. The Chinese Space Agency released a photograph taken by its Yutu-2 rover as it explored the far side of the moon, showing what appears to be a large cube on the lunar horizon, one that the CNSA has dubbed the Mystery House. This prompted comparisons to 2001's moon monolith, with one wit suggesting it is the stage where they filmed the Apollo 11 moon landing. Haha. The Yutu-2 rover touched down in January 2019 as part of China's second phase of lunar exploration, which also represents humanity's first soft landing on the far side of the moon, with the aim of learning more about the origins and internal structure of the heavenly body. It will take the plucky little rover 2 to 3 months to reach the cube, which in all likelihood is simply a large boulder blasted onto the surface by an ancient impact. But really, at this point, we just can't rule any possibility out. It might very well be a structure housing Joe Rogan's DMT elves who are there waiting for us to prove ourselves worthy enough to join the international, interdimensional community. And that's just how science works.
That's all we know. There's no, you can't, like, you could say that's a well of souls, that's what happens when you die, that's the afterlife, that's a parallel dimension, these are aliens, that's how they can communicate with us, they're non-physical life forms that exist in these realms of light. We don't know. It's just, you're just guessing, right?
While it might be uncool to smash into satellites in low Earth orbit, it is hella cool to do it millions of miles away, at least according to NASA. On November 24th, the space agency launched its DART program, which is basically a proof of concept designed to test whether it's possible to change the path of asteroids so we can avoid going out the way the dinosaurs did. But unfortunately, Bruce Willis isn't involved. The test will see an unmanned 500-kilogram probe travel nearly 7 million kilometers from Earth and smash into the smaller of two asteroids at around 6.6 kilometers a second, or 24,000 kilometers per hour. This is all done in the hopes of changing the velocity of the asteroid by a whopping 0.4 millimeters per second. This change in orbit is what observers from Earth will be looking out for sometime after the collision, which is set for September 2022. Mark your calendars. Though the initial change might be tiny, over months and years, it could amount to a large change in the trajectory that could shift potential planet killers off course, proving once and for all the superiority of mammals over saurians. Lactation forever. Speaking of lactation, it's time for our final segment. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Part of the show where I tell you about the weirdest thing I've seen on the internet and where I can show you. Today's video starts off as your pretty standard hot festival girl dance video / creepy voyeur video. and briefly gets very exciting, depending on your point of view, as the woman reveals her breast. But things rapidly degenerate into weirdness when she begins spraying people in the crowd with fountains of milk directly from said boob. But wait, there's more. The video appears to be pre-pandemic and was filmed apparently at the Dirty Bird campout in, surprise surprise, California. Some people have expressed disgust at the act, likening it to spitting on people. Others are concerned at the waste of the milk, because they feel that she should be feeding it to her baby, or at least be selling it to bodybuilders for profit. My reaction is summed up near perfectly by the woman screaming,
Actually, I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
And that's all I have time for in this edition of Remotely News, the news you may or may not be able to use. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, please check out some of my other videos. Come on!